All right, folks, breaking news. The Alex Murdaugh trial was actually rigged. It was a total show trial. It was fake. They couldn't convict him. They had to rig it. The irony, it's oozing from my every pore, because the lapdogs, the sheeple, who were just following, the Murdaugh podcast and, the true crime addicts, in other words, the worst people in the world, the soccer moms. They were all convinced, Murdaugh, he's so influential. He's going to rig the trial in favor for himself, and he's going to get off. And then it turned out, wow, they came back and they convicted him in 20 minutes. So there was essentially zero jury deliberation. Meaning that he got lynched. If you're in a murder trial and they come back in 20 minutes, either you're Jack the Ripper, or you got lynched. And Alex Murdaugh got lynched. It is now proven. We have 2 jurors who have come forward and are admitting, the clerk of court, she came in and she was talking to us, the jury, and she said, that Murdaugh guy, he was a total liar. Everything he said was wrong, and you shouldn't believe him. And considering that Murdaugh himself was, he was, I would say, the most important witness for the defense, considering there weren't many people around who lived. He's the only living witness, really, who was on that property, until he called the police and said, oh my gosh, my family's dead. He's it. So he was the star witness. And the clerk of court for their county came in and told the jurors, Alex Murdaugh, he's full of shit. You shouldn't listen to anything he says. Just listen to what the prosecutors say. The prosecutors who weren't there. Don't listen to the one witness who discovered the bodies. Don't even consider what he has to say. Now, it's one thing, you consider, and maybe they come on down on the side and say, I don't know if I believe him. The clerk of court outright told him, and this is an authority figure, in the justice system, the so-called justice system that we have here in America, said, ignore that. And so this is direct proof that they had to rig the trial against him. They could not let the jury decide fairly. And remember, when you get a jury, juries are always at least 70% biased in favor of the prosecution. The way that most people think, just look at public opinion. The jurors are made up of people from the public. What is the public? When someone gets indicted for murder, what does the public think? Obviously they're guilty. Why would they be indicted for murder if they aren't a murderer? And so we don't have the standards that we're told in this country of, the prosecution, they've got a real tough job because, you see, they have to prove that you're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. All the defense has to do is you just have to, try and raise doubts. You don't have to prove innocence. It's the exact opposite. People assume you're guilty, and if you're the defense, you have to prove that it's impossible for you to have committed that crime, or else they're going to convict you, and they're going to give you the death penalty, and they're going to like it, and they're going to laugh at you on the way out the door. Because that's the way that Americans are, especially when you have this guy Murdaugh, who was already a well-known public figure in his community, and was not well-liked by anyone. In fact, his entire family, including the wife and son who were murdered, they were pariahs. The whole town hated them. A lot of people had plenty of motivation to kill these folks. I saw a testimony from, during the trial, I remember, who was it? Was it the maid? Or was it, no, the maid's dead. No, there was a living maid. Or maybe it was family, friends, anyway. But there was testimony from a friend of the wife that the wife no longer would shop in their local town. She would go to a different town to go grocery shopping because she did not feel safe around the residents of their own town. And so if they hated the wife, you know that they hated Alex Murdaugh even more, because he's the man. He's the real power broker. And so if you have these folks from their community who hate the Murdaughs, who see Alex Murdaugh is on trial for murder, we can put him away forever, we can give him the death penalty. Most of these folks, they're going to be, I would say, 90% biased in favor of wanting to fry him. In fact, they would be happy to pull the lever themselves and zap him in the electric chair. They'd turn it on and off. They'd make him dance. That's how much they would be happy to kill this guy. And even then, even with just about the most poisoned jury pool you could imagine, the prosecution felt like they had to rig it against him and send an authority figure into the jury room to essentially order the jurors to convict him. And to say, you're stupid and gullible if you believe him. And remember, it was not a member of the prosecution. It was not a prosecutor. It was a supposedly neutral member of the court. Because, you know, the courts are neutral, we're told. The judges, no. The judges sit squarely in the middle between the defense and the prosecution. It's not like the judges work with the prosecutors and they're good friends with them, and the judges usually are, former prosecutors who got promoted to being judges. No. It has nothing to do with that. No. And all the people who work in the courthouse, they don't have special relationships with the prosecutors, even though the prosecutors work there all the time. And, you know, the defense is not treated like outsiders. Oh, no, none of that. The clerk of court, she's totally straight down the middle. Oh, yeah, but by the way, the defendant is guilty. So, as of right now, all I see is News Nation's on top of this, because News Nation's big into the, the high-profile trials. They like to do stuff, they like to cover stuff like this. Brian Enton's all over it. Already on the ground in South Carolina. But I hope he gets the new trial. I don't know if I'd have the patience to sit through another Murdaugh trial, but because that was rough. I mean, that was a long trial. That was tough to sit through, but it was entertaining and it was interesting. And you might not like the guy. I mean, he seems like a really bad person, but he ain't a murderer. No matter how many times you soccer moms want to read about it, he's not a murderer. In fact, there's probably more evidence that his son was a murderer, which is the main reason that the town hated him. Because they think that his son was a murderer, and that his father got him off, was able to get him off. He got off scot-free because his daddy was important. But so when they got the chance to throw his daddy in jail for murder, for murdering the murderer, oh yeah, they did it. And, leave aside the insane contradiction of, Alex Murdaugh rigged the court system, as a powerful lawyer to keep his son from being prosecuted for murder. And then he went and murdered that son, who he supposedly, completely bent the law and manipulated the justice system to protect. He then went and murdered him himself, along with his wife, who stayed with him despite the fact that he was a disgusting heroin addict. Yeah, so obvious, totally clear-cut case. Yeah, Murdaugh, definitely guilty. So I just, I won't say I feel vindicated, because nothing's happened yet. I mean, none of this, I'm not surprised by this. This is not shocking. This is directly in line with the conduct that I would expect from any prosecution. In any case, this is the way that America works. I'm not saying other countries are better. I certainly don't believe that. I don't think that really any country has a good court system. I think that the courts, when you have government courts hearing cases of the government against citizens, yeah, the court is always going to be biased against itself, which is the government, or biased in favor of itself. It's biased against the people. That is how government courts work. That's how they've always worked. Remember, where does the term court come from? It was the court of the king. It was the king's court. And then you had these judges who were acting essentially as plenipotentiaries for the king's authority. And so you'd have to go before the king and have essentially a royal legate. I don't think they called them that, but you'd have a royal legate of some sort who would hear your case, and you'd plead your case to the king's court. And then they would decide whether the king would decide to smite you or grant you mercy. And then the juries were introduced as a check on the court's power. But who controls the jury? Who tells the jury what to do? Obviously, it's the court. The court, in jury instructions, essentially tells the jury, you have to do whatever the prosecutor says. That is essentially what you're told if you're a juror in America. And if you go and you don't agree to that, and you essentially have to lie. If you want to be an honest juror, you have to lie to get onto the jury, because they do not let honest people onto the jury. The kinds of people who are put on juries in America are lynch mob participants. Plain and simple, that's who they look for. The prosecutors know exactly who they need, and most defense attorneys are dumb and naive enough to believe that justice is blind. And so they end up letting the worst people in the world sit on a jury. And that, folks, is why Alex Murdaugh is in prison. Now, he may very well deserve to go to prison for other crimes, namely fraud, which if you watched the Murdaugh trial, most of it seemed like a fraud trial. It was a financial crimes trial. That's what the prosecutors were talking about. They had to filibuster for 3 weeks by talking about what a fraud Murdaugh is, because they had no evidence at all, period. None, zip, that he was a murderer. They had some circumstantial stuff. They said, well, you were there, you discovered the bodies. That was it. That was what they had, was that, hey, they were killed, your family was murdered at home, and you came home and found them dead, so, there you go. You were there. And they had these ridiculous theories about how to try and place him there, because, if I remember correctly, like the telemetry, if anything, from what I remember, proved that Murdaugh wasn't there. And that they had this cockamamie theory about how he would have to be, like, driving in one direction and then, like, throw his phone out the window while he was driving or something. I don't even remember, because it was such a small part of the trial. What they made the trial all about was this guy defrauded his friends and family and stole money. And it's like, okay, put him in jail for fraud. And you know what? As old as he is, well, he's not that old, but I think he might be close to 60. He may spend the rest of his life in prison anyway for the fraud stuff. So there's no reason to give him a fake murder conviction when he's just a fraud. So, with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.